Okay, all right. Very good morning, all. So I hope you were able to complete the assignment, the first project yesterday, right? I mean, which uses a serverless end-to-end, right? Oh, sorry, the yesterday's one was about the CLI and cloud formation, right? Okay, all right. So what we are going to do now today is we're actually going to extend the project what we did yesterday or day before yesterday. As I said, I wanted a few prerequisites. This is the actual, the full project that uses AWS Lambda, API Gateway, Amplify, DynamoDB, and Cognito, right? I mean, so all of us are familiar with Lambda, API Gateway, DynamoDB, and we all know what a Cognito is, right? So Cognito is for authentication, right? If you're building applications, you want users to authenticate. Cognito is a way where you can actually build a user pool and you'll be able to authenticate users. And also Cognito allows you to federate with other social sign-on providers such as Facebook, Google, Amazon, Twitter, and so on and so forth, right? So that's LinkedIn and so on and so forth. So that's what, and also Cognito allows you to authenticate, federate with any other identity provider such as Active Directory, right? And that's basically a way to authenticate. And any app that you build these days, or any app that we install these days, allows you an ability to, authenticate using Google, correct? So in fact, recently I was using some application. Okay, I think some tax filing software that I was using, income tax filing software. So that was actually allowing me to use my Google credentials, right? So things like that will be possible. I'm going to introduce a new thing called Amplify, right? AWS Amplify. Right. So AWS Amplify, it's a it's basically a full framework that AWS offers, where you can actually build full stack applications. You can build front end UI, and you can also make that UI mobile friendly, right? There's something called progressive web application, correct? So you can build PWA applications very easily using Amplify, and you can build a complete extensible full stack, which uses and amalgamates all the best practices, such as using a repository to store your code, and introduce practices that will allow you to do a real-time development and real-time build and deployment of your application. Okay, and it's basically a framework that AWS has built, and AWS offers this. And the way it works is, right, so it's a set of purpose-built tools and features that lets front-end web and mobile developers quickly and easily build full stack applications on AWS with the flexibility to leverage the breadth of AWS services. As your use cases evolve, with Amplify, you can configure a mobile or a web app backend, connect your app in minutes, visually build a web front-end UI, and easily manage application content outside the AWS console, right? So it's basically to ship your applications much faster and scale effortlessly with no cloud expertise needed, right? I mean, very limited cloud expertise, right? You don't need much of a cloud expertise. Okay, so there are 3 stages, right? So build, ship, and scale and manage. Using this, you'll be able to create a backend, okay, such as APIs and so on and so forth, and also any backend data store that is required. Connect your application to that, manage the users and content, and build a front end UI for your application, right? So choose from a pre-built web components in Amplify Studio that you can use to easily customize or import designs. Okay, so then you'll be able to. Yeah, so then what you can do is you can actually use it to deploy your application, which shipping is nothing but deployment, right? Or go to market, correct? So where you can actually connect your repository. For example, you can use a Git, or you can use Code Commit. Code Commit is basically a AWS managed service to store your code, right? I'm not sure how many of you have worked with Git, but GitHub is something that I told you last time. It's basically it's a repository where you can store your code, right? In fact, go to github.com. It's a very famous code repository. right? You can create your own repositories, make it private or public. And in fact, a lot of open source components are actually in the GitHub, right? And you can just go ahead and explore and search for those open source repositories, and you can see you'll see a lot of code out here and stored in GitHub repository. And so in fact, the code commit is a private GitHub repository, Git repository for your environment, right? So which is a fully managed service. AWS, you can just go to code commit and you can build a new repository and you can store your code there. And you can configure the build settings whenever a new code is updated, or whenever a new code is uploaded into or checked into the GitHub repository, it will trigger a build, right? You can actually use it to trigger the build, and you can deploy the application and host the static web application on S3 static website hosting. And you can also, extend it, scale it, right, by extending your backend and support multiple different environments, right? You can have a dev, test, staging environment, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's a very brief about Amplify. Anyways, we're going to do a quick, and Amplify has got two things, right? Amplify Studio and hosting, right? So Studio is where you can actually let's quickly watch this video, what the Studio means.
Amplify Studio is a new visual development environment in Aws Amplify that makes creating a full-stack web or mobile app, both a front-end UI and back-end, fast and easy. Instead of writing front-end component code from scratch, you can quickly choose from dozens of UI components for popular features. These UI components are also available within Figma, so your designer can create and customize them, and they can be imported into Studio as code. Use the Studio console to set up an app backend and connect your UI components to backend data in clicks. Studio offers a developer-friendly approach to low-code. It automatically translates visual changes into clean React code, letting you focus on the business logic and building a great app experience. Amplify Studio makes it easy to get started without cloud expertise and build full-stack apps that are built to scale following AWS best practices. Get to market faster and easier with Amplify Studio.
Yeah, somebody was asking, how can we use React, right? Amplify using Amplify Studio, you can actually go and use React, and it actually supports all of these frameworks, right? React, Angular, Vue, Next, Gatsby, Hugo, Jekyll. Jekyll is one of my favorite. I mean, it gives you a lot of blog sites are based on Jekyll. In fact, I was building one blog site for myself using Jekyll, but I'm not finding time to take it to closure. Okay, let's quickly watch this video for Amplify Hosting.
AWS Amplify is trusted by the best front-end and full-stack development teams around the globe for creating full-stack, serverless web apps with continuous deployment. AWS Amplify Hosting is a fully managed, developer-focused web hosting service that is fast, secure, and reliable, and scales with your business on AWS. No matter where your users are located, your web content is delivered fast. Files deployed to AWS Amplify Hosting are delivered to AWS Content Delivery Network servers around the world, providing a reliable, low-latency experience. Every web app or site is served over a secure connection. AWS provisions and issues an SSL certificate for each site deployed at no fee. You can deploy any web app by simply connecting a Git repository with no configuration needed. Amplify will automatically build and host your site on our global CDN. Amplify Hosting makes deployment a collaborative experience, with deploy previews for every code change with easy testing and iterating. Once you commit your repository, your app will redeploy every time you commit code to your deployed branch. You can also enable this for multiple branches if you want a preview site for a new feature. You can even password protect these additional branches. Use data to understand how users experience your site. Set custom alarms and notifications to let you know if a metric exceeds a threshold. With Amplify Hosting, deploying to the web only takes one command. Get started in the Amplify console. Once you've hosted your app, you can quickly add data, storage, auth, and more using AWS Amplify Studio's visual development environment. You can also easily build and deploy a full-stack web app. Whether you're building a static website or a server-side rendered app, you get the speed, security, and reliability you need, and the ability to quickly scale on AWS. Start building and deploying your app today.
Okay, cool. Let's do one thing. Let's get started. So this is the self-paced hands-on lab that we're going to do today. Okay, so in this, you will create a simple serverless web application that enables users to request unicorn rides, right? What is unicorn? Unicorn is basically used in the horse race, correct? But these days, unicorn is also very, apt for startup companies, which is actually hitting 1 billion in valuation, right? So those companies are called unicorn companies. Right? So you take the startup world, you take those startup companies which have crossed 1 billion and $1 billion US in valuation, they're called unicorn. But anyways, I mean, it's just a fictitious, application that we are going to build for unicorn ride from the Wild Rides fleet. Yeah, this is again a very fictitious thing, right? Wild Rides is again built by AWS, something like your pet store, correct? Okay, all right. So this is what exactly, right now, if you see this wildrides.com, it's basically it's hosted somewhere on AWS, but we are going to host it using serverless, and we're going to, authenticate using Cognito, right? Have a login experience for users, sign up experience for users, and all of that. Okay, cool. Okay, let's do that. So the architecture is like this. You have the web browser, which uses HTML, CSS, JavaScript, etc. And the entire application is deployed on Amplify. Now, Amplify uses S3 as its backend to host the static website on S3. And it's going to authenticate using Cognito, right? Whenever the user signs in or a new user registers, they're going to authenticate using Cognito. And then the dynamic calls are actually made to API gateway. It uses Lambda and it stores the data in DynamoDB. So these are the 4 components, right? So static website hosting, user management, serverless backend, which is this guy, and the RESTful API, which is this. Okay, serverless backend is, sorry, the DynamoDB. RESTful API is this portion. Okay, so there are 5 modules. Module 1 is host a static website using the Amplify console. So we have hosted a static website using S3, correct? But now here, we'll not even touch S3. We will directly host it using Amplify console. And it will store it in S3 behind the scenes, so you don't have to worry about it. Along with the continuous deployment built in, right? So we are going to use code commit, right? So that's the service that we're going to use which is a private Git repository for your AWS application. And then we're going to use a Cognito user pool to manage your user accounts. Then we're going to build a serverless backend, deploy the RESTful API, and test it end to end, and then terminate it, right? So that it goes away. Okay, so let's see what is the time it takes. It takes about 2 hours, but I'm going to fast track it. I'm going to complete it before 9:30. Okay, but you guys can take 2 hours or more than 2 hours or 2 days to complete this. Okay, and AWS experience that's required is for beginner. Cost to complete is each service used in this architecture is eligible for the AWS free tier. If you're outside the usage limits of the free tier, completing this tutorial will cost you less than $0.25, which is 25 cents. Okay, if you have already exceeded your free tier, then it's going to cost you about 25 cents if you follow the steps that is given in this tutorial. Alrighty, let's get started. Let's go to the first module, host a static website. All right, I'm in the static website. So here we're actually going to do this question, number 1. Okay, select a region. I've selected a region. I'm going to select Mumbai region. Create a Git repository, right? Using AWS Code Commit console. I'm going to go to Code Commit. Code Commit. Okay, I've selected the Code Commit. Okay. Select create repository. I'm just going to create a repository. I'm going to say, give the repository name as wild rights site, right? Description, and just say create. Okay. So the code, now that the repository is created, set up an IAM user with Git credentials in the IAM console. Follow these instructions. I'm going to follow these instructions. Let me just go follow these instructions. Okay. Let's go to the IAM. So IAM. Make sure to sign in as I who will create and use the Git credentials for connections to code commit. Yeah, I'm the one who's going to use it. In the IAM console, choose users, choose your IAM user. Okay. This is my IAM user, which is RPL admin. I'm going to choose my RPL admin, which I've logged in as. Okay. So here, if you actually come down, you'll see, if you go to security credentials, you will see multiple things, right? You will see access keys, etc., etc. Okay, let me just delete all these access keys. I will create a new access key for myself because we need to use the CLI as well. I see that all these are old ones, which I don't want to use and compromise on the security of my account. Okay, I've done that. Okay, so now if you actually come down, you will see something called HTTPS Git credentials for AWS Code Commit. You have to say generate. I'm actually going to delete this existing one, so you won't have anything. So just click on generate credentials. So it's going to generate the credentials, and let's also download that, right? It's going to download it as a CSV file. Okay. So that's done. So now copy the username and password for that IAM generated for you, either by showing, copying, and then pasting, or downloading the CSV. I have both options right now. Okay. So you just copy it. So now connect to the code commit console and clone the repository. Okay. So you can actually keep it, right? You have to keep that thing. Okay, let's go back. Okay, that's done. So let's go back in the code commit console. From the clone URL, select clone HTTPS. Okay, I'm going to go back to code commit. Let me open another window. Let me just keep this like this, or I can close this. And let me just open the CSV file that I just created. Open with Excel sheet. Yes, okay, this is there. Let this be here. I will use it when I want it. Let me go back. And let me go back to code commit. Open it in a new browser window. Okay, let me go into my repository. Okay, so from here, clone URL. So just select the clone URL and say clone HTTPS. Okay, so you will have this. Okay, so now what you need to do is you also need to install Git in your local machine, right? So how do you install Git in a local machine? I'm going to give you some steps for that. For Windows users, follow these instructions. Install Git on Windows, right? So if you just go here, use this. So you can use the 64-bit or 32-bit as per your thing, right? So just go this and use this. So then once you install it, then you'll be able to run the Git commands. For Linux users, yeah, you have to follow this command, right? I will give these two at the end of this. Okay. All right, but Git is already installed in my Mac, so I'm not going to worry much about it. So what I'm supposed to do now, I'm supposed to go clone the, I've created a new repository, which is this git-code commit, etc. /version1 repos. So this is my repository. I have this repository. So this is my repository. So what I need to do is I just need to go clone this, right? Or you can also follow these instructions given here, right? create Git credentials for a IAM if you not download them and generate Git credentials. Okay, so what you also need to do is you have to, the credentials that we have created, right? We have to actually use those credentials. Let's finish that and come back. Okay, to connect to a code commit repository, open the code commit console. In the region, select the region where the repository was created. Choose clone and then choose the protocol you want. Okay, open a terminal command line and then use this command to clone your credentials. Okay, the first time you connect, you're prompted for the username and password for the repository. Depending on the configuration of your local computer, this prompt either originates from a credential management system or credential manager, right? So now enter the username as password generated for Git credentials in IAM, the one that you created in the step 3, correct? Depending on your operating system, this information might be saved. Okay, let's do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, go to my users. So this is the folder that I have, right? Okay, I'm just going to say project 2, part 2, right? That's the thing. I'll just go to project 2, part 2. Right. So this is where I'm going to clone my repository. Okay, because usually what happens is when you use Git, you can read more about Git, okay, as to how you can use Git, because it's a very important concept. All of you will be expected to understand how Git works, but it's very simple, right? You can just do a self-learning on that. There's so many videos and tutorials available for Git, how you can use a GitHub or a Git. These days, there's also GitLab, okay. Okay, all right. So now I'm just going to go run this command, git clone this one. So I'm just going to run this command. But before that, let me see if I have Git. Yeah, I have Git installed. No worries. Let me just do it. Yeah, so it's going to ask you for the username password. So this is where you have to go take this username password as this guy. You appear to have cloned empty repository, which is fine, no worries. But anyways, it works, correct? Okay, all right. So let's go back. So that's done. Okay, create a Git repository, that is done. So now this step is also done. We have done this step. You appear to have cloned an empty repository, that is also done. Now let's populate the Git. Now what we have done is we have cloned the repository. Sorry, somebody has to go on mute. Yeah, so now what you have to do is you have to populate the Git repository on the AWS side, correct? Because right now the repository is empty. There's nothing in the repository right now. It's kind of empty here, right? So it's an empty repository. Either you can create a file from here, or you can take the source code, or you can start building new set of source code on your local and upload that into the repository. So that's called push. That's called Git push. Okay. So that's what we are going to do now. But we already have the code for our Wild Rights website, which we are going to download and populate our Git repository, which is the code commit repository. Okay, all right. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to go to our if you see, it would have created a Wild Rights site folder, right? So this is the master branch for my GitHub repository because I've already cloned it here. So let's go inside that repository. That will show which branch that I'm using. It's a master branch. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do the CLI that we did yesterday, right? AWS S3 CP. It's going to download the files are actually present in this S3 bucket, which is a public bucket, right? Anyone can access this bucket. Okay, so I'm going to download it from here. Download all the files from this, and copy all those files into my local, which is this Wild Rights site. Okay, so I'm going to run this. Okay, so let me just go copy this command and paste this command. Right, what AWS S3 does is it copies the contents of this S3 bucket, which is a public S3 bucket. Anyone can access. into this particular folder in a recursive fashion. Hyphen recursive is, it will go into the folder, subfolders, copy all the files and create the entire folder direct structure for us. Let me just do that. So the moment I hit, but I need AWS CLI to be installed, right? So yesterday's assignment that you guys did, you need to ensure that the AWS CLI is there and it's configured. Okay. All right. So it's done. So now if you see, I have the entire set of files that I require for my Wildright's website cloned into my local system. Okay. Copied into my local system, all the HTML files, images, CSS, JavaScript, etc., etc. Okay, perfect. So now let's come back. So now what we need to do is we actually need to add all these files, commit all these files to the Git, right? So right now, if you see, my Git is empty. I don't have anything in my Git, in my code commit repository. Okay, the code commit is nothing but it's a Git. Okay, at the end of the day, it uses Git version 1.79, which is managed by AWS. Because if I say Git, it is code commit. Okay, I don't have anything in my code commit Git. So I need to first go ahead and clone it, right? So now let me just commit those files into my GitHub repository. In my code commit repository, for that I need to say git add dot. Okay, just say that git add dot. Okay, it is added. So if you see, this plus means that it has added the entire folder, the current directory into my git for commit, right? It's ready to commit. So now let's say git commit -m new. New is a label that you're giving, right? It's just a label, right? For that particular entire check-in process, you're giving a name, right? The moment you say git commit -m new, yeah, it's actually going to go ahead and commit everything into my Git. Okay, so now let's do a Git push. Git push is a command which is used to physically copy the files to my code commit repository. Let's just do this. Okay. Let's see. Code Defender repository has not been set up with Git Defender. Run Git Defender -n setup to fix. Okay, let me do that. Let's just do this. Should this be used for Git Defender? Yes. Should this email be used? Yes. So Git Defender is basically an additional security for your thing, right? Okay. All right. So now let's repeat these two steps. Git commit -m new. Okay. So it's all. So all these are following files have been added, modified, moved, or removed. Okay. So all these have been added. If you say A is added, okay, got it. Yeah. So that's done. Now let's just go ahead and push all these files to my code commit. Okay, you're pushing to the remote origin. See, if it gives you an error for the Git Defender, do it. Otherwise, just ignore. Okay. Okay, that's done. So now if you see, all the files are checked into my GitHub. Let me just go ahead and refresh this, right? Let me just go and yeah, see, all these files are now present in my code commit. Okay, so now any changes that I do here, right? For example, if I change some HTML files, what I need to do is I need to follow these two steps. I need to say commit, give a new label to it. And if you see here, the labels will be available here. Right? So this is the master, right? And you can actually can see the label somewhere. Okay, anyways, I'll tell you later. So you can add a new label saying that, okay, modified index.html, something like that, right? It's just a tag that you can give for the changes that you're making, right? So these are some of the best practices that you will learn when you become a coder, when you become a developer, right? When you're actually working with source controlled repositories, these are all best practices. Okay, all right. So now that's done. Let me go back. So now all that is done. So everything is done. So now let's go ahead and enable the website hosting in the AWS Amplify console. Launch the AWS Amplify console page. Let me go and say Amplify. Yeah, so this is the Amplify console page. Okay, just click on Get Started, right? And deploy with Amplify console, right? So that's the feature that we're going to use. Okay, deploy with the Amplify console. Sorry, just give me a second. Yeah. So let me just go to my and use Amplify. Deploy with under click Get Started, under deploy with Amplify console, select the repository service provider used today and click on next. Okay, so here, so you see this nice little page, correct? It says configure backend, add UI components, and all of this. Okay, and here just you can go for Amplify hosting, right? Not the studio. So just go for Amplify hosting. That's not mentioned here, but here you can use AWS Code Commit. Okay. Select the repository service provider used today and click on next, right? Which is the code commit. If you use GitHub, you will just need to authorize the AWS to GitHub repository. From the drop down, select the repository and branch just created. Okay, so now just say code commit because that's the repository that we have used. And click on continue and use the repository that we created, which is wild rights site, and branches just master. Page, leave all the defaults and select next. Okay. Yeah, so just leave all the defaults as it is. Okay, and then say review page, save and deploy. Say next. Acknowledge this. Okay, this needs to be acknowledged. You can specify any environment variables or any other. If you're using a Docker image, you can use the Docker here. Anyways, we're not going to use Docker. Just leave it as is. Okay, so now all this is done. So now just say save and deploy. Okay, so once you click on save and deploy, this process takes a couple of minutes for Amplify console to create the necessary resources and to deploy your code. Okay, so once it's deployed, you will see something like this, right? And once completed, click on the site image to launch your wild right site like this. Yeah, it's actually provisioning it right now. Okay, it'll take a couple of minutes, right? So it will just go through a build pipeline where it first provisions, then it builds, then it deploys, and then it verifies the entire thing. Once this is done, so you will actually see that you'll be able to access your website, the static website, without any backend components, nothing of that sort, from this URL. So let's just wait. So right now there are no backend components that we have. Okay, it's building it. It's deploying it now. It's deployed. Let it verify.
Sairam sir, one small doubt. AWS
Yeah.
Amplify is a deployment tool, right, sir? Means how it will deploy means like Jenkins or Kubernetes, how the deployment is going run behind that.
No, that is all not visible to the end users, right?
Okay.
It's all taken care by Amplify. It does not. I mean, even I don't know what it uses behind the scenes. That's a managed service.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so it's done. So it's verified. Okay, so now if you actually go and refresh this page, right? You see that nice little logo. Anyways, let me just click this. Okay, so if you see, this is the URL of my Amplify URL, right? So it's a HTTPS URL. It gives everything. It has this .amplifyapp.com. It has my entire website, just the front end portion of the website up and running. Okay, so how it does is totally up to Amplify. Okay, Amplify takes care of it, right? You just focus on your code, upload the code into code commit, and then it takes care of it. Okay, so now let's come here and let's do a bit of a modifications. This is done. So let's go to modify the website. Open the index.html page and modify the title line so that it says title wild rides of the future, right? So this is what it wants me to modify. Let me do that. Right now, if you see my title, I don't have any title right now, correct? I don't have it says wild rides. So let me just go ahead and change the title of my index.html. So my index.html is here. So let me just use nano index.html, or if you're using Windows, you can just do it differently. Title, it says wild rides. Wild rides, rides of the future. Right? So that's what it wants me to change this as. Sure. Just save it. Yes, it is saved. So the moment there is a changed file, this icon, the thing is going to change. Right? The color is going to change. So now what you need to do is you need to push it, right? By adding git add index.html. Just do that. It's going to add it, and it will become plus. So then you say git commit -m updated title. Updated title is just a name that we're giving. Yeah, so that's added. Okay, so now if you see, finally, you have to just say git push. Okay, it's pushed to the code commit. All right, so now once it's completed, so what it does is it automatically builds the website now. If I go back and if I go to my Amplify console, see, it triggered a new deployment job automatically because it has the intelligence that, okay, some file in my repository has changed, which is the index.html, and then it will provision a new build automatically, and then it will redeploy the whole thing into my website. Okay, that's called continuous build, continuous integration, and continuous deployment, CI/CD pipeline. Okay, like tools like Jenkins are very popular, right? You can use tools like Jenkins to achieve a CI/CD pipeline for your code. Okay, the code can be either software code or it can be a infra as a code. But that was a good question. Whoever asked that question, right? So what it uses behind the scenes? Yeah, because it's a managed service, nobody knows, what AWS uses behind the scenes to basically, run this pipeline. Okay, so now it's done. So let me just go ahead and refresh this. Yeah, if I refresh this, see the title has changed now. Wild rides of the future. So this is how the continuous build works in Amplify. Okay, so recap. Okay, we have created a static website using Amplify console. Okay, and also we set up a code commit repository for your website, which will automatically build the code and deploy the code to my Amplify. Okay, as a next step, let's go to manage users. Okay, so here we are going to do this step, authentication step, where we are going to use Cognito. Okay, first thing is let's go to Cognito. Okay, I'm going to go to Cognito. Cognito. Yeah, and then it says manage your user pools. Manage user pools. Yeah, I already have some pool here. That's okay. Leave that aside. Create a new user pool and call it wild rides. Yeah, while writes, and then say review defaults. Yeah, review defaults. On the review page, click create pool. Yeah, the pool is created. It's a new user pool that we have created for our wild rights application. Note the pool ID on the pool details page of your newly created user pool. So this is the pool ID. Let me just take a note of it. Okay, so now add an application to your user pool. Okay, from the Amazon Cognito console, select your user pool, then select the app client section, add a new app client. Okay, so now that's what we're going to do. From the pool details page for your user pool, select app clients from the left general settings sections in the navigation bar. Here, this one. Click on this app clients, add an app client, add an app client, use Wild Rights web app, use Wild Rights web app, uncheck the generate client secret option. Client secrets aren't currently supported for use with browser-based applications. Yeah, I'll just uncheck this, generate client secret. Choose create app client. Yeah, choose create app client. I'm just going to create the app client. Note the app client ID for the newly created application. So this, I'm going to take a note of it. I will just use my subclient. This is the one. Okay. Alrighty. So let's go back. So that's done. Update the website configuration. The /js config JS file contains settings for user pool ID, app client ID, and region. Update this file with the settings from the user pool and app you created in the previous step. Okay. So now you have to edit this config.js. Okay. Let me go back to my nano cd. It says JavaScript, cd JavaScript. It has a config.javascript here, right? Let me just edit that config.javascript nano. The correct values for the user pool and the app you just created. You can find the user pool ID, user pool client ID. Okay, so those are the things that we're going to take. Okay, so now let's go take the user pool ID. Yeah. So this is the user pool ID. Let me go here. So for the user pool ID, let me just paste it. User pool client ID. This one. Copy this. Okay. Region is AP South 1. South 1. Okay. That's what we need to do. And then we also have to change the invoke URL. The value for user for the pool. Okay, we'll come back to this. Okay, so now let's just save it. Okay, I'm going to save this. Okay, I think this is correct. RC7, that's the invoke URL for the actual service. Okay, that's fine. So I'm going to save this and say yes. All right, so the file is saved. So now if you see, the moment the file is saved, we have to do all of these. And dot git commit. Okay, I'm just saying modified JavaScript. I'm just saying that. Okay. Updated JavaScript. It's asking for a command. Okay. that's done. So now you can say git push. Yeah, so it's going to push one file into the repository. So now let me go back to the git. So it's going to provision. If I look at my code commit, you'll see that the JavaScript file is changed, right? So config.javascript. So this has changed. Okay. Right. So now just going and deploying it. Okay, let it deploy. That's done. So validate your implementation. Visit /register.html. Let it complete the build. Then let's go ahead and refresh the page. So you can actually learn a lot using this example. I mean, if you're not a developer, don't worry about it. But you can actually learn a lot using this example. Like you can learn JavaScript, you can learn how to use a backend API. Okay, all right. So this is done. Okay, so now let me just go refresh my page and let me do this, right? So visit /register.html, right? From this /register.html. Yeah. So here, complete the registration form and choose let's write. Choose the PDF button, or you can also go here and click on this PDF button. Okay, I'm going to use a temporary email. So copy this to clipboard. Come back here. Just give a name. Give my email address here. Give the password as let's write. Okay, invalid password did not confirm. Password must have uppercase, right? Okay, so it has all of those things, right? Okay, I will get an email here. Okay, I got an email here. Let's just click this. 181036. 181036. What is the email ID? This email. Validation successful. You'll now be redirected to the login page. Okay, cool. It's created. Now let me log in. Yeah, see, I'm logged in. Is successfully authenticated. The page is not functional yet because there is no API invoke URL configured in the config.js, right? You will configure this in the module 3. Okay, perfect. But now what we have done is we have created a user pool and we have authenticated against that user pool. So let's go here, users. Yeah, so if you see, I just use this email ID, right? So that's come here. It's now authenticating with my Cognito. See how simple it is. If you have to write all of this code all by yourself, then this alone will become a huge project by itself. Okay. All right. So now let's go back. That's done. This you will see this page. So now let's go to module 3, which is the building a serverless backend. So now what it says is everything is done. Front end is done. Authentication is done. But now go ahead and build the backend, right? Which is the API gateway and Lambda function to run the business logic. Right now, it's only the front end, right? So which is basically just a dummy thing. Now let's do the business logic, which is this portion that we are going to do. All right, so now we're going to do this portion, right? So we're going to create a DynamoDB table and we're going to use a Lambda function. Okay, let's first go ahead and create a new Amazon DynamoDB table. Let's go here, choose DynamoDB. All right, let's go here. I'm going to create a new table. Just create a new table as per the specifications called rights. Okay, and ensure that you just follow this as is, right? So because all these are going to be hard coded in your code. Okay, as a table name, this is called case sensitive. If you make mistakes here, then your application will not work properly. And use RID ID as a string for the key type, as a partition key, and keep it string. Use default settings and go ahead and create it. Just create the table. Okay, it's creating. Let's just wait for, okay, it's created already. Now let's make a note of the ARN of this particular table. Let's make a note of it somewhere here in my notepad. All right, so that's done. Next is let's create a new IAM role for your Lambda function. Okay, because we all know that every Lambda function needs to have a IAM role. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new role. I'll go to IAM. Go to role. Yeah, create a new role. Okay, so here the AWS service that uses on your behalf is Lambda. Lambda is what is required. Click on next permissions. So then for the permissions, AWS Lambda basic execution rule. That's what we're going to do. Yeah, this one. Next, add tags. I don't want a tag. Role name is wild rights Lambda. For the role, select this. Just create the role. On the permissions tab, add an inline policy. Okay, let me just search for this let me open this role called wild rights Lambda. And on the permissions tab, I'm going to add an inline policy that says give access to DynamoDB table, correct? Because this Lambda should be able to access the DynamoDB, right? So just begin typing, choose service, begin typing DynamoDB, okay? Actions, select actions, begin by put item, right? We need this to put item into this, right? Into the search box. Yeah, so let me just go put item. Just put item. Yeah, select this. And under resources, you have to specify that ARN of that resource, specific resource, right? Add an ARN. Let's copy this ARN from here because I want to only give access to this table. I don't want to give access to any other tables, correct? I just add this ARN. Yeah, and then say create and use DynamoDB write access. And okay, that's done. Review policy. Give a name to it called DynamoDB write access and just create the policy. So if you see, it's created. You see the JSON of this, it has allow DynamoDB put item. Resource is this. Okay, perfect. Let's come back. Create a Lambda function for handling the request. Let's go to our famous Lambda console. Let's create a new function. Author from scratch. Request unicorn Node.js. This time we're going to use Node.js, not Python. Okay. Okay. Author from scratch. Give the function name as this. Node.js 6.1. No. Okay, that's fine. You can use this 14x. That's fine. x86-64, which is okay. Choose an existing role because we've already created the role, correct? Choose an existing role, which is wild rights Lambda. That's done. Advanced settings, this is fine. Just create the function. Yeah, so the function is created. So now scroll down to the function code and replace the existing code in the index.js with the contents of request unicorn.js. Okay, let me see if I have the request unicorn.js here. No, it's not in this, but it's here. You can just download it from here. Just go download it from here. Yeah, so just copy this whole thing and go back to your Lambda function. Replace this entire code with this guy. And just say deploy. Save it. Okay, so now come back, close this. You click on create function, replace it, save. Right now, let's validate our implementation. So for this module, you will test the function that you built using the Lambda console. Okay, so now let's do a configure test event. Select a test event. Test event. Configure a test event. Test event. Okay, here you have to paste this in the JSON, the request JSON. Okay, paste this. These are the arguments that you're passing to the function. Okay, so just say create. Okay, it's created. Okay, so let's go ahead and test it. Let's see what happens. Yeah, status code is 201, right? Which is fine. So it works properly, right? You should basically get this. You should get a ride ID. So it's like, you're requesting, like, the application functionality is like this, right? Like you have Uber, Ola, right? You basically request for a Uber or Ola based on your coordinates, right? Location, right? So if you're in a current location, it will search for an Uber or Ola, which is in the closer vicinity, and it will request it. So here we are actually trying to mimic that entire functionality, but instead of a Uber or Ola, it's going to be a horse that is going to come and pick you up and drop you. Okay, so that's why you see, in this case, the horse this is the ride ID. So the horse name is Rocinante, color is yellow. It's a female horse. ETA is 30 seconds. It will reach in 30 seconds. Okay, so that's what it does. Okay, fine. Fair enough. Let's go back. So this works fine. Okay, so now my backend is ready. So now let's go ahead and deploy a RESTful API for my Lambda function using API gateway. Okay, so let's create a new REST API. Let's go to API gateway. Just close all unwanted tabs. Just something is hogging the speed here. API gateway. Yeah. Click on create API. Use the wild rights API. Okay. So here it will be a REST API. Okay, that's not mentioned here explicitly, but it's basically a REST API. Keep edge optimized selected. Okay, so just go ahead and build it. So it's going to be a new API. The API name is wild rights. Keep edge optimized as the thing. Okay, and then just say create API. Okay, so now we're also going to our API should also be authenticated, right? Not only your front end, your API also should be authenticated. That is the best practice, right? So what we are going to do is we are actually going to create a new Cognito authorizer for our API. Under the newly created authorizer, under the newly created API, go to the authorizers, because we are going to link the Cognito user code with the API. Unless and until the user is authenticated, he won't be able to invoke this API, correct? Because the user is actually going to invoke this API through the front end, correct? So click on create a new authorizer, enter wild rights for the authorizer name, done that. Then select Cognito as the user pool, right? And use the wild rights as the, okay, as the pool. Enter authorization for the token source. This is authorization. That's it, right? So leave the token validation, just say create. Yeah, that's done. So now you can actually go ahead and verify it, okay? Open a new browser tab and visit /write.html under your website domain. So redirect it to the sign in page. Sign in with the user you created in the last module. Copy the auth token from the notification on the write/html. Okay, let's do that. If I go here, this is, yeah, so it's actually getting me the authentication token, correct? Copy the auth token from the notification. So just copy this. Go back to the previous tab where you just finished creating the authorizer. Click test at the bottom of the card of the authorizer. Paste the auth token. Okay. So what I'm going to do is go back to the API gateway, the authorizer. Click on test, and here for the token, just paste this token and say test. Yeah. See, you get a response code of 200, and it gave me an authorization from the Cognito for this particular user ID. Blah blah blah. Okay. And I got a JWT token, which I can use for whatever time, right, that it says. Okay, this is the time. This is the time that I authenticated. Okay, so it works fine. So no worries because I get a 200. Okay, so now this is done. So let's go back. Let's go to the resources and let's create a new resource. Create a new resource. Okay, enter ride as the resource name. Okay, because it's going to be /ride. Enter select API gateway course for the resource. Yeah, select this. Click on create resource. Okay, we are just creating a path for the API, correct? Okay, all right. So now let's create a new function. Create a new method with the newly created from the action. Just say create method under this guy and use post. It's going to be a post. Say click on this. Okay, here it's going to be a Lambda function, and which is that Lambda function? It's going to be the wild rights Lambda function, right? First uniform. Yeah, this is the function that we're going to use. Okay, and then click on save. Yeah, you're about to give permissions. Okay. Yeah. So the function is, the method is created. Choose the pencil icon next to the authorization, correct? Yeah, this one. Choose the method request card. Okay, what to do? Choose the method request card. Yeah. So here, yeah, this one. Choose the method request card. Okay, this one. So if you see, this is the method request, right? So choose this card. And then choose this pencil next to the authorization, right? So choose this. Select wild rights Cognito user pool from this, right? So you have to select the wild rights Cognito user pool because, okay, so let's save this. I'll explain the concept of this, right? So now what we have done is we have a Cognito user pool which will authenticate users, right? And then it will give a token for them to authenticate. Now for the API for this particular method, we are associating that authorization. So unless and until there is a valid authentication token coming from the Cognito user pool, this is not going to go through, right? So nobody will be able to invoke this API. So it's basically to invoke this API in a very secure fashion. Okay, select the wild rights, click the check mark icon. Okay, that's fine. So this is done. So now we can actually go back. Now, if you see, it actually uses the our Cognito for our method request. So unless and until this authorization is there, it's not going to allow. So now let's go ahead, deploy the API. Actions, deploy API. Deployment stage, new stage. Let's see what is this name that they want to give. Enter prod for the stage name. This is going to be production code. Production code, just say deploy. So it's deployed now. Note the invoke URL. You will use it in the next section. I will just take a note of this. Put it in my notepad. This is my invoke URL. Okay, so let's come back. Update the website configuration. Okay, we have to again open the config.js. Back in our, and if you remember, there was an invoke URL which we left it empty. So let's go ahead and fill that portion. Nano config.js. Yeah, so out here, let's just replace this URL, or let's add this new URL here, which is this one. Which is space, additional space there. Let me remove that space. Just in case. Okay, so this is done. Let me just save it. Okay, this is saved. Let's just go back and do all that other stuff, git push, etc., etc. Right? Updated JS with invoke URL. Okay.
Sir, I think first we have to git add, right, sir?
Git add, okay. Yeah, that's correct. Git add, then commit, change. Yeah, thanks for that. I was getting this error, so I got confused. You're not using an Amazon email address. Okay, all right. So now let's just go ahead and say git push. Yeah. Okay, so once it's pushed, so then I think it will just go ahead and start building it out. Code commit. Let me just open code commit. Not code commit. Sorry. Just open Amplify. Yeah, it's going to deploy this. Okay, so let's wait for it to deploy. Then once it is done, let's. Okay, so we are in the end of it. So then the last section is terminate. We'll come back to that later. Okay, it's building now. It's going to deploy, then verify. Okay, perfect. It's done. Okay, so now let's validate, right? Let's visit /write.html under the website domain. This one. Let me just refresh this. Yeah, see, it's now authenticated. Like, okay, my auth token is here and it's all authenticated properly. Okay, you're authenticated. Okay, so now what you can do is if you're redirected to the sign-in page, that's okay. After the map has loaded, click anywhere in the map and set a pickup location. Okay, I will just set a pickup location somewhere near Seattle. It's going to load the map, the real-time maps, right? Okay, I will just set up a pickup location somewhere around here, right? So you can just set the pickup location. I'm just clicking this, and then I'm going to say request a unicorn. Yeah, another occurred. Why? Okay, there's some error that is coming, probably due to some JavaScript issues. Course header is missing. Okay, let me do one thing. Let me just close this. Right? Let me open a different browser. Okay. I will sign in again with my user ID here. Password is because we enabled the cores on the API, correct? I'll just request unicorn here. Okay, somewhere there is a cores issue that's happening. Master dot. That is present on the requested resource. Okay. Okay. I think I understood it. Fine. Let me go back. Let me just open the S3 console because that's where it's all stored. S3. Okay. Okay. So the thing is that S3 bucket is not accessible, right? It will not show up in your account. It uses behind the scenes. The Amplify uses it behind the scenes. Okay, let me see how I can sort out this issue. Use Amplify. Static hosting or the issue. Some article there. There's all the fun. Okay. This is not CloudFront actually. Deploy, stage prod, just say deploy. So it's deployed now. Okay, let me try now. It might work. Okay, cool. It's working now. I don't have those errors now, right? Okay. That course is required on the. Okay, so if I just say request unicorn. I remember that this actually gets a horse from somewhere nearby, and then it requests it. Okay, at least it's not getting an error now. But if you actually go back to your DynamoDB table, where is the table? Table. You will see so many entries there for all those write requests. Okay, so yesterday in API Gateway example, I asked you to go to the resources, select that particular method, and say enable CORS, correct? You have to do that today also. So just once you do that and redeploy, then that error will go away. Okay, just remember that. Okay, let's go back to the DynamoDB table. This is the table, writes is the table. View items. Yeah, see, this is the so this is the request that is gone for this particular user. So if I create a new user and if that user is actually going to request for it, then you will get that. Okay, so let us go back and let me see. You should see a notification in the right sidebar that set a pickup location. Choose request unicorn. You should see a notification in the right side, and then see the unicorn icon fly to your pickup location. Okay, probably that's not happening. Let's see why it's not happening. I don't see a unicorn flying to my location. Read properties of undefined reading gender. Okay, write.js 46. That's where the error is. Okay, probably see this could also be due to the it's a older version of code. We are using a new version of Node.js, right? Write.js. Okay, so now line number 46. Okay, let me just open that file directly. To site JavaScript write.js. Okay, this is much better. Line number 46. What is line number 46? Pronoun equal to unicorn.gender, male, his, her. Okay, anyways, no worries. Let's do one thing. I'll fix this, right? Let me understand, what's actually happening. Is it because of any code mismatch, the framework mismatch, or what is it? I'm not sure, because I have seen this work some time back that the moment you click this and request for a unicorn, you will see a horse flying to this location and pick you up. And then you will see a entry added to your DynamoDB table. Okay, so that's the functionality. But anyways, let's not get too much obsessed with that functionality. But all I want you to understand is how the whole end-to-end flow works, right? And how serverless makes it much easier, right? I mean, probably in 1 hour, we were able to get this whole thing up and running, right? Whereas if you want to build this whole thing, you have to find servers, you have to find an authentication mechanism, you have to find a way to choose the right database, data store, and so on and so forth, which is going to be a bit of a trouble. Okay, I'm going to give you this project. So please do this project. Okay. And I'll also give you those couple of links that I gave you, right?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, suppose if interviewer asks question related to today's project and the first project which we did a while ago, how should we answer them? Like all that what we have done is looking at the steps given by AWS and we are following it, right? So how can we prove that we have really done something innovative? We have really learned something out of it.
Okay, good question. Great question. Why don't you do one thing? Please go on mute. There's some echo coming from your side.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So why don't you do one thing? Just think through how innovatively you will be able to answer, right? So take a day's time. So tomorrow we are going to do a quiz program and probably follow up breakout room to address any of the issues in the projects. So before we start the quiz program, why don't you come up with an answer as to how you will handle this, and then I'll give you an answer. You first take a shot at it, then I'll give you an answer. I'll tell you, how you can handle this. Okay, not only you, anyone else would want to take a shot at it, please do that.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to give you this. Let me copy this file. Yeah, cool. I've given you this. Just make an attempt. I know it's a little tricky. Right? So there's so many services, so much of configurations. There are chances that you may get confused, but don't worry about it. Just take a very genuine shot at it. It's not. I mean, it's not a problem even if you're not able to complete this fully, right? So just take a shot at it and see to the best extent possible. You just try and do this, right? So don't worry about it. Don't worry about completion, right? So all that I want you to understand is I want you to understand the concepts, and I want you to appreciate those differences, like what SB38 just said. If an interviewer asks you what are the differences, you should be able to answer those clearly. Okay. All right. So let me do one thing. Let me take leave here, right? And I'll let you all go into your breakout rooms and start doing this project, part 2 of the serverless project. It's basically an extension of what you guys did day before yesterday. And please complete this. Tomorrow morning, we're going to actually do a quiz, right? And it's going to be a very interesting quiz program, very fun-filled quiz program. After that, before the quiz, probably I will let a few of you, including SB38, to explain, what is your thought process? How would you handle this? Such a question should come to you during your interview process, right? And I'll probably give you some tips around how you can handle those tricky questions. Okay. All right. So thanks a lot. All right. Have a great day, and wish you all a advance happy new year. And we'll start the new year with a small quiz program, which is going to be fun filled. Okay. Thank you so much. Bye bye. And Sairam Sai Krishna. Thank you. Thank you, mentors. Sairam.